Made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry, that was funny though.
But
keep dreaming there, babe.
thanks. As the perfect son-in-law, they had taken the time to be there and help guide me through a lot of things. And looking back, I think that maybe when I stepped in a wrong place, when I made a bad decision, I almost wonder if sometimes that didn't hurt them a little bit more. And things got difficult to them. If Kim and I were obviously not getting along, that it was difficult. How do they handle that? I was as much their son as their son-in-law, that's for sure. In fact,
that is true. My dad and Justin do some side jobs together sometimes, and Justin had to work on another job, so I went with Dad the other day to kind of help out, and he introduced me to this lady as his daughter-in-law.
See? I'm the perfect son-in-law.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Thanks, Dad. Now I know. So, you're right, I guess.
I am right. Of course. Say that. Is that on tape, John?
He's
Excellent.
right. He's right.
Another thing, we mentioned siblings, is, like I said, Kim has a little sister. Well, Kim's sister, she grew up and she had to try to find a guy to match me. Well, I had this relationship with her folks.
Sorry.
It's
true, actually.
I hope I don't sound arrogant.
No, it's true. She was scared to death Dad wouldn't like another guy like he likes Justin. You're right.
She wasn't going to have the luxury of having some guy that had ate dinner at their house for 4 to 5 years. And so that was hard on Amy. She had to work hard, and we had to work hard with Amy that there wasn't bad feelings between us. I mean, those kind of things can sneak in there. So I'm enough gloating about what a great son-in-law I am.
I'm going to borrow this video to show them just to see if we're on the right track. So we're going to look at 5 principles for working at and building family relationships in a healthy way. So the first one is seeking to resolve any conflict that's between us. Any and every relationship will have some degree of conflict. So just as in marriage, unresolved hurt and anger lead to the drain being blocked. So it is with our extended family. It could have become blocked in our growing up, or maybe since we've been married. Whichever it is, we can use the same process that Todd and Candace talked a few weeks ago about resolving those issues. So the process holds true for every relationship, not just marriage. Remember, you need to first identify the issue, the problem. Work out what the main problem is. Sometimes it's a big one that has caused hurt and maybe even family split. Sometimes it's a buildup of the smaller things, or maybe just a pattern of behavior over the years. Being open and talking about it with our spouse will help us identify the unresolved conflict. Second, consider if we need to apologize. Unresolved hurt and anger are rarely entirely one-sided. It's so powerful when we take the initiative and say sorry for our part, but we must be wise. We really need to ask ourselves, is it going to help the situation? Will our parents even understand what we're talking about? Because a lot of times they have no idea. And then last, is it going to cause more harm than good? And those are things we need to look at before we do that. So third, be prepared to forgive. And I think this one is a huge one. We talked a lot about forgiveness last week. We need to ask ourselves, am I harboring resentment and unforgiveness? If we are, we may have to choose to forgive when there is no recognition, no apology from them, or without having even discussed it with them. Keeping the drain clear of unresolved hurt and anger is important not only for our relationship with them, but it's important for our children's relationship for them. I think this one's huge. A grandparent-grandchild relationship is special. We want it to be as good as it possibly can be. Sometimes the arrival of grandchildren actually will help kind of heal broken relationships between families as well. So we must seek, as far as in our power, to resolve any conflict between them.
And I like that last, as far as it's in our power, is, we've talked about already a lot about the relationship with my family. There's only so much we can do. We can go to them and we try to talk to them. We tell them what the conflict is. We apologize that we're hurting them, but we have to do what we have to do, and it doesn't really change anything.
Right.
For us, yes, but for them, not really. But we have to do our part and let God have the rest of it. Because our next bullet point is that considering their needs. We learned in the first class with Les and Teresa that when we focus on the other person's need, the relationship improves. And so when we get to the homework for this session, we're going to have a section that's about supporting your parents. You're going to make a list of possible needs to support your parents. Needs like companionship. What can you do with a parent or an in-law to provide them companionship? Or just conversation and contact. Just calling them up on the phone or stopping by in the afternoon or evening or whatever. Getting time for them if you have kids to spend time with their grandkids. I know that my folks recently moved also, by the way. But when they were here, literally when we would set up time for them to spend with our kids, it was just like night and day. I mean, there was such a huge difference when they were getting to spend time with the kids compared to what
it's kind of that connection, I think, probably.
Another thing to provide to the parents and in-laws is look for a chance to give them encouragement, to show them that you really care and that you have a great deal of gratitude for what they did for, if it's an in-law, for raising your spouse, for your folks, for taking care of you and providing things for you. Another thing is security for them. If some of them are getting up in age, they start to feel lonely. And for you to show them any of these things actually provides a sense of security for them. And then there's the real, at least for us guys, I think, and I don't know, I can only speak for myself, but practical help, going over and mowing the lawn, cleaning the leaves out of the gutter. These are things that we can do to really help build that relationship with our in-laws or our parents.
The commandment in the Bible to honor our father and mother still applies after we're married. It's just the outworking of it needs to change a little. Now, the third one is leaving behind emotional dependence on our parents. So for some couples, the adjustment to independence and the change of loyalties needs to be addressed. Okay, that's a really important one. Some of us really need to examine, have we let go and left our parental home? And that's at an emotional level. Obviously, we've left the parental home, but have we emotionally left that place? If we haven't, it really will cause big strain on our marriage. So, in her book, The First 5 Years of Marriage, Sandra Lundberg says this: if your spouse gets his or her emotional needs met in his or her relationship with parents instead of you, then there's a problem. You may even feel as though they're having an affair. Sometimes this problem begins when a wife feels frustrated over her husband's lack of interest in conversing about her day. What does she do? She starts talking to her parents instead. Maybe calls her mom every night on the phone. Sometimes the husband is the frustrated one. It's really common for a mother and son to have long, frequent conversations and leave the wife feeling ignored. Neither scenario would be the appropriate. Respect for each other is key. This is not to suggest that children and parents should cut off the relationship under the guise of leaving and cleaving. But your primary human relationship now is with your spouse, not your parents. And I know that last time I mentioned this is something I think is just so important, and it can't be said enough. Your commitment to God comes first, then towards your spouse, then towards your marriage. That is God, marriage, children, family, then friends, and so on. And if you set things in place that way, you won't believe the difference. It's just really important. So the other side of the same coin is parents who are emotionally dependent on us and who find it hard to let go. He's smiling because
I mentioned it already.
And my mom will call me 2 or 3 times a day because I'm her only friend, and so that would be something where she's emotionally dependent on me.
And if we weren't able to communicate and talk about this, it really easily could get frustrating to me. I mean, every night phone calls type of thing.
Yeah.
Little things, they just work their way in. A wedge starts out with just that little point. As it gets driven in, widen things up. So you defeat it by getting there first, taking care of it ahead of time.
There's an example of this. One man spoke about his father, who was very dependent on him, even after he was married. They spoke on the phone every day, and usually when they talked on the phone, it was right after the husband would get home from work, so he'd walk through the door. This began to cause tension in his marriage. Initially, his wife didn't say anything because her father-in-law was on his own, but after taking the marriage course, this issue came up, and she told her husband that she was finding the phone conversations with her father more and more difficult, that the timing of them was just really bad. And it made her feel left out when her father got his news before she did. By the time you talk to me, you can't face going over it all again. They discussed the situation and came up with a solution that he would have a conversation with his father once a day at his office. And the wife said, since we've set that up, a lot of things have changed. My husband is putting more emphasis on our marriage, making it priority, and that makes me feel great. She also commented that both her own husband and her husband's relationship with his father have become better because of that too. So confronting an issue like the parent and putting boundaries in place, that can be hard. Setting those boundaries and just vocalizing, look, we have to set these boundaries up, but it's really crucial for the sake of our marriages. So in the early years of marriage, you need to establish the pattern for your new family. You set the boundaries. You make clear your allegiance to your spouse. And by doing what you can to initiate the adult-to-adult relationship with your parents and in-laws. Now, the middle years of your marriage gives you a chance to build on what you've established. Then when children arrive, grandparents do get more involved, and that's a time to maybe redefine those boundaries, maybe talk about that again with your parents and in-laws. It's true that in the later years, then you'll benefit from those boundaries that you, as a family, chose to uphold.
All right, the next topic is pointing out that as a couple, you need to start to make your own decisions. I mean, to some of you, these things might sound like, yeah, but some of us, it may be something that we're struggling with. And so you need to start to make decisions as a couple. Parents and in-laws, they want to give you good advice. They have good advice to offer. They have many years of experience, and we need to appreciate that, and we need to listen to them. And Kim and I, I think that it would be agreed on that we're willing to listen and take advice from them. But we've also made a decision that if there's a decision that's got to be made, and we go to them and for advice, or they offer advice, we accept it, but we go together alone to make that decision. It's important that we discuss these things just between the two of us. And it could be something like, we have small kids, so discipline on the kids has been an issue that we've had to work through and ask questions about. But when it comes down to it, we have to make the decision as a couple, or how we spend holidays coming up right now. And it's been interesting. But sometimes the pressure from your parents when they're giving you this advice, it's really clear. But sometimes it could be a lot more subtle, more manipulative, and they may not even be conscious of that. It's not something they necessarily are doing. And I guess, if there's a divorce, parents are divorced, look for that there, watch for it. Sometimes, you see the obvious point scoring thing going on between them. But again, I just want to go back to, don't think that we're saying sideline your parents or ignore what they have to say. But at the same time, don't feel pressured. Don't let them make your decisions for you. Don't feel like you have to make a decision right then and there for their sake until you talk about it as a couple.
And then last is we need to support each other as husband and wife. When a husband and wife have an agreed policy and stand firmly together, putting it into effect, attempts at manipulation invariably fail. Any weakness, though, any crack in that unity of husband and wife, that enables those in-laws to start driving that wedge in between. Or parents. Some people experience a confusion of loyalty between their parents and their husband or wife. It may be that when we go to our parents' house, our behavior changes, and we're tempted to support our parents' views on things against those of our husband or wife. But for the sake of the marriage, we must present a united front. Okay, so here's some ways you can do that. Refuse to take sides with parents against our husbands or wife. Okay, don't let that start happening. Never listen to criticism about your spouse from your parents. So a lot of times that'll happen maybe if the spouse is gone and the parents start criticizing, just don't stand for it. It may be even something you have concern about, but if you keep that united front and don't stand for listening to that, it helps. And then always support each other. Don't give away your ups and downs. So don't go to your parents and talk about the struggles that you're having with things, because then it's that side thing that kind of starts happening, I think.
We get up here and I feel like we are open book, and that we just let you guys see all of the stuff that's wrong. But you were talking about on the bullet note about taking criticism, and it made me think of one of the. We may even have this topic coming up, but still I can't recall. But Kim is a planner. I mean, especially with the holidays coming up, she knows exactly what's being cooked. She knows what time everything's being served. She knows every detail, and my folks don't care. And everything is fly by the seat of their pants. And I can remember when we were first married, my mom just saying, why does she have to plan everything? Can't she just relax and have a good time?
Not until everything's checked off of my list.
Obviously, once everything, if it goes close to smooth, then it runs smoothly. But anyway.
But guess what? Now she appreciates my lists. She likes them.
She does.
After 13 years. Maybe it's because it makes me happy. Happy Kim makes happy family, right?
Another little dirty secret type of story that I have written down here is Kim's relationship with her dad, and how it would be very easy for me to have a problem sometimes. Kim has the kind of relationship with her dad that I really, really hope that I have with my daughter Chloe. It's awesome. I mean, there's no question about it. But Kim can come home on a Monday, and she can tell me, oh, man, my dad did this, whatever this is. And it was so annoying. He introduced me as his daughter-in-law, or whatever it may be. And that's all fine. But it didn't take me long to learn that if I said, man, I hated it when your dad called you his daughter-in-law, I was in trouble. Nobody ever says anything bad about Kim's dad in front of Kim.
He's my dad.
But we can laugh about it, but supporting one another and communicating, I know we've went over this before, but it creates this closeness between us where those things is something that, yes, that's the truth, but it's not an ugly thing.
Right.
It's something that we know.
We even joke about it with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big family joke.
But at first it wasn't. I mean, quite honestly, I just felt like she was much more loyal to her dad than she was to me.
Do you still feel that way?
No.
Okay, good. So now I'd like to take a few minutes to look back over the 5 principles and discuss which points are most relevant for you. Okay, so be aware that sometimes something may not really seem like a big thing to you, but it's a very big thing to your husband or wife. So be prepared to hear it out. Really try hard not to be defensive if the problem relates to your own family. And if there's something that's just having a really serious impact as your relationship together because of your parents or in-laws, and you're struggling to sort it out and you feel like you're getting nowhere, please ask us or other leaders back there to help out. So often, when we're not emotionally involved, it's easier to kind of see the issues than when you are. So we're going to just take 5 minutes. You guys look over those principles on page 62 through 64.
We want to move into the second portion of tonight's talk, and it's how our marriages can be affected by our past. And I think that sometimes this is the more difficult section, part of the session is to deal with that past. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Kim found a quote, Bill Hybel, in Building Real Intimacy, and it was that family dynamics can determine our self-esteem and our self-confidence. Family values shape our character, and family experiences influence our concepts of how marriage should be structured, and how children should be raised, and how we should view work, education, money, politics, etc. This is all built out of our upbringing. All of us will look to our families and decide either to repeat that